All right, man. Let's
Well,
jump into it. What's your plan for this? What do you?
yeah, man. I mean, so free flowing convo. I mean, I really just wanted to focus on. I guess we can start with. We'll get to Podhome in a little bit, but I wanted to start with what are your general thoughts about the ecosystem of live streaming audio, video. We have YouTube, but then we have podcasting. Like, what is your view on that, on the ecosystem, on the culture of live streaming? Do you think it's popular, getting more popular? Like, is it even relevant?
Absolutely. I think it's making a comeback because if you think about it, so much TV used to be live, and then, geez, over the last 20 years, especially 10 years for myself at least, I can't remember the last time I've actually sat down in front of a TV and watched anything that was broadcasting live, apart from maybe football games or something like that. But certainly live news or cooking channels or things like that, just the act of sitting in front of a TV has kind of gone, and so that I think that kind of gave rise a bit to all of the on-demand stuff, which, don't get me wrong, is great as well. Who wants to have to get up at 2 a.m. To watch a football game in Australia, when you could just record it and watch it later? One of the things I've actually been noticing recently, and just seeing and playing around with, which is odd for me because I'm not going to really do this ever again because I'm a minimalist and I don't really buy a lot of stuff. But live shopping, have you ever seen much of the live shopping stuff that's starting to come out?
A little bit like on TikTok.
Yeah, so it'll be on TikTok. I've got this app at the moment which is called Whatnot, which is related more to collectibles. So it'll be like Pokemon cards, trading card games, sometimes books you'll see on there and things like that. And I think this is actually much more popular in Asia rather than in the West, where they will buy stuff almost exclusively through live streams of people selling stuff and showcasing stuff. And I think that's just going to get more popular, man. Why would I, if I'm looking to buy, for example, some calisthenic equipment, of which is something that I would buy, and I look online and there's rings of gymnastic rings. Some are wood, some are plastic, or you could get the TRX ones, or there's all sorts of ones with bands and things. I think it'd be awesome to have a person kind of showcasing that and showing, like, here's the latest live. This is how you could use it, and it's the interaction of actually being live with someone on the other side of the world as well is kind of addictive. I underplayed it at the time, but the other aspect, I guess, of the cool technology stuff coming out now is you can interact with a person who is doing stuff live. That's probably the biggest difference, I guess, where if you're on one of these apps, you can be writing in the chat. They'll do giveaways, so you could perhaps participate in a giveaway. I There was a live stream just recently, and I came up with a really good pun, and they finished off the show with my pun, and it was like, oh shit, like that's awesome. Like, yeah, I made them laugh. I made them like shake their heads because it was a pretty bad one as well. So I've come around a lot myself to being, oh yeah, live streaming. There's a lot in here which is interesting and fun, and not just in a media context of information, of podcasting or something like that, but I could see it interacting with all sorts of things, like shopping, for example. That's going to change a lot of things, I think.
Yeah, man. I've even seen because last night I was watching a football game on Amazon Prime, and they got like some QR codes about like for the jerseys or for the team merch, and that's becoming more popular. I also think about like live streaming online is almost like a combination of Saturday Night Live and like the news. Like, because that's sort of like what podcasting is. Like, podcasting is like a little bit of entertainment, a little bit of news, local stuff, national stuff, whatever. And it's like this like weird blending of entertainment and like reality. And then you can buy something from it. It's very interesting. Um,
It
but
has it has some of the same drawbacks of podcasting just in general, though. If if you set up a live stream, for example, you go, I'm going to set up a live stream on YouTube. I've done this plenty of times before, or via some of the podcasting apps, which we'll talk about soon. The the same problem of feeling like you're speaking into the void still exists, though, which is if no one is there and you're live streaming and you're saying, you're acting as if you're speaking to people, but you can see in the chat that no one is there, and on the actual stream views that no one is there. It's a bit of a weird feeling at the same time. It's probably even more harsh than the feeling of recording a podcast, putting it out, and then seeing that it gets what 5 downloads over the next week or something. It's like, oh god, that hurts. It hurts even more when it's a live stream. So uh, you got to be a bit persistent at it, and I think have a bit of a mental fortitude. Perhaps it's even something, I don't know. I'm sure there's people who would argue that you can get the virality of it going. And I met a guy once who he was a no-name dude just in Australia. I met him at a calisthenics park, and he was a bit introverted. I wouldn't say he's a naturally entertaining person, but he dedicated himself for almost 2 weeks straight to live streaming 18 hours a day or something like that. It was something absurd. He would be playing video games, he'd keep the stream going while he went to the toilet, he'd order in food, and the only times he'd turn off the stream were to sleep 6 hours a night or something. And he managed to go from, zero to thousands of viewers really in a 2 week period. Obviously that's like really intensive and probably really bad for his health. There is something, I guess, about maybe you could get some of that same virality, which is why a lot of people are promoting video nowadays. That I think that's the only real benefit that a video podcast has over an audio podcast is that you can get some virality from it, because audio is hard to. I don't know. Do you think you can get viral live streams as well? Have you really seen any of that going on?
Viral live streams only because like it's like an event. Like it's probably going to be related to some sort of news cuz like I'm not sure if it's accurate to say, but there was just a US debate, and there's so many different, like there's an ABC channel, there's an NBC YouTube channel, but then they got it on Apple TV and they got it on Twitter, and there's all these millions of views on all these different platforms. I'm almost inclined to say that is viral, just anything that has the majority of eyeballs, or more than, I think, in my opinion, like more than a million views is sort of viral, or maybe 2 million views is a bit viral. And then once you get over 5 million, it seems like that's something that maybe more people will be aware of. So I think it's possible to be viral with a live stream, but it's also about like the urgency that you feel with it. Because there's some people that I watch live streaming. Like there's just one YouTube channel called Den of Nerds. He just talks about like comic book stuff, Marvel stuff, Star Wars stuff, whatever nerdy stuff. And like during Comic Con or during some sort of event within that space, I'm always like thinking in the back of my mind, like, oh, I gotta watch. Like, they should be live streaming. I gotta check them out because I want to be a part of the community, or I want to get that commentary. I want to sort of be in that like corner room while the main event is going on. Almost, it's almost like there's always. I think it's like a private suite almost. Like if you were to be at a football game and you have access to a private suite, there's probably a lot of cool people in that suite. Live streaming is something similar. Um, you're with people that are like-minded, and you can talk and you can like enjoy whatever's in front of you, and then you can talk shit, you can talk things out. Um so I think it's very interesting. There's a balance between the community and virality, but the opportunity for virality is more tied to general general culture, I think. And I'm not sure how I feel about, like, I'm never going to try to play the culture game. I'm never going to try to be viral if I live stream. But I definitely think it's possible for sure.
Mm, yeah, yeah. I always come back, I guess, to the interaction bit of it as well, because that's, I think, what sets it apart from perhaps live streaming in the past, which is you there were mechanisms, I guess, if you think back to those shows where it used to be you could call up a hotline or something that they had set up and interact with the host in some ways. So think back to almost radio type live, and then just add the video element on top of that as well. Or I'm pretty sure there used to be those donation drives where they'd just have rows of people sitting and waiting for at telephones, and you could call up and they would announce perhaps someone who just donated a large amount or a small amount, or it would show you the amount that you just donated up on the screen with your name. I think the things are just getting better with that as well. One of the kind of cool little things I noticed on this Whatnot app was when your live stream ends, you can get it to automatically switch from your stream to another stream that is going on live, and it shows that all that you're rating that other live stream, and it just automatically puts all of your viewers into this new live stream. So it's kind of like you're helping other people who are also live streaming at the same time by moving your audience over, and something like that. I think that's kind of cool. And so yeah, there's probably a lot of more unique touches that can be added just to the technology itself to allow people to interact not only with the host but with the other people who are participating, and then also hosts interacting with other hosts at the same time. Yeah, I think there's a lot of cool stuff that's going to come from that. So I certainly expect to. It depends. I'm in Brazil at the moment, and I've been traveling around the world, and I've noticed just being around this side of the world has opened up so many more doors for possibilities in terms of catching things as they happen in the moment. Whereas when I'm in Australia, it's just awful time zone. Everything is always middle of the night,
Mm.
or early morning. So you never really get to interact with the broader base of what would you call it? English speaking media.
Hmm. Well, that's really interesting. It's like you're so far away, but then you have like these experiences where you can be like right then and there. When you're so you live stream a lot for your podcast. Why do you live stream? Is that for like ease of posting, or do you really want to go viral? Like, why do you live stream?
For me, it's the main reason was to be able to produce episodes quicker. So n- part of that is ease, and then part of that is also being able to, uh, I guess, like get feedback from the audience more quickly. So, for example, the first time we were trying it out, it was just like, oh, and when I say we, I mean myself and my co-host Juan on the Mere Mortals podcast. When we were trying it for the first time, it was just like an experiment, just see will we enjoy this or not. And we're like, oh, okay, yeah, that was kind of cool because we can get it done really quickly, and we already were recording straight up minimal editing, so it worked nicely with that. But when we were doing more pre-recorded episodes with multiple camera angles and I was editing it, and it would typically take me 5 hours to edit an episode, and I'd spread this out over a couple of days, and so we'd put the episode out for 4 days after it had been produced, sometimes longer depending on how many we were recording. That was when it was getting to the point where it was like, oh, if we have any interaction with the audience, the interaction is now occurring out of sequence and much later than when we actually interacted with them. So this is where it really went, oh, if we're live streaming, kind of forces us to get things out quickly, and we're interacting in the moment because we get the latest feedback from our audience, then we record, and so we're recording with the latest kind of feedback from our audience, and then we're putting it out really quickly after that. So there's no time lag or gap where people are interacting with us and it kind of gets lost in the void because it's just in between episodes or something like that. So that was the main reason for live streaming just in general. And then the reason we do it on YouTube is mostly just because it's an easy one-click link, and it's got a chat built into it already. So uh, yeah, we don't care about virality or the particular quality of the episode. It's honestly, we use YouTube more as it's not so much for the visual aspect; it's for the ease of use for viewers at home.
Yeah, YouTube is like more like a utility. It's like there's some technology that's almost becoming like water or electricity, which is weird, but I definitely see that point. YouTube is definitely just very easy to use and very approachable for millions of people. Um so you live stream the video, but then you also live stream the audio, right? Like how does that work for you? So okay, I guess I should ask before I ask that, why did you move to Podhome for your podcasting hosting service? Because that's like really interesting. It's a brand new company. You know, not a lot of people know about it, but there are some interesting opportunities with it. What were some key things for Podhome that made you interested in using it?
Yeah, I mean the live streaming was a pretty big one, to be honest. I, the functionality of being able to do a live podcast on the podcasting apps has been around for, I want to say, 2.5, maybe 3 years now, and it's really only in the last year that I've been able to utilize it. And this was just because the old host that I was with just didn't have the functionality. They hadn't built it into it. So yeah, when I saw Podhome had it, and some of the other additional benefits of being able to have multiple podcasts all under the same plan, which is what I do. I have multiple podcasts. It was just like, all right, I'm willing to take a risk with this, even though it's a new company, for example. Uh, so that was probably the one of the biggest ones. It's real easy as well to use. It's just a couple of one clicks and you're up and running. In terms of the actual impact that live streaming on the podcasting apps has had on my podcast, it's been almost zero. But there's reasons for that. I can explain that if you want. And then yeah, there was just some other additional features with Podhome, which were a stock and standard for me now. Like I need to have the ability for chapters, for example, and transcripts and the people tag and things like that. So yeah, that was the main reasons.
So when you're using Podhome to live stream the audio, right? You're only streaming audio. What apps is it going to, and how do you get it there? Like, what is like the step by step process to begin a live stream in Podhome, and then to confirm that your show is actually being heard and listened?
Mm. So you need to have a broadcasting tool, which is essentially getting the audio from that you're speaking into and sending that to somewhere that Podhome can kind of capture that, and then it broadcasts it out using RSS through to these podcasting apps. So it's sort of just the additional step of when you've got your audio and you upload it to your podcasting host, and then it magically goes out. It's a similar sort of deal. You just have to add an extra layer onto it because you're doing it live and not just simply putting an MP3 file into a box on your podcasting host. So there's a couple of different tools that you can use for this. The one I use is called Butt, Butt, broadcast using this tool. Really simple interface. um, Podhome has basically instructions on how to use it. Copy this link, put it into this field, make sure that your audio, your mics are set to here, that your headphones are set to this, so you can kind of monitor the output. And yeah, then it's simple as clicking, the the play button on that tool, and then the play button on Podhome, and bam, you're pretty much ready and rumbling. Obviously also putting in some extra details of a schedule. We're going to be live here at this time. This is the name of the the episode that we're going to call it. And then after the fact, you can either keep it or delete it. I typically delete it and then just upload a fresh copy. But I'm pretty sure you'll be able to use that audio in the future as well to make it even faster. There's also other ways you could do it, or other tools. I've used Rocket Broadcaster in the past. That was pretty good as well. I actually like the simplicity of butt. But yeah, I think there's probably quite a few different ways you could go about doing it. Podhome has certainly made it easier than any of the other podcasting apps that I tried before.
Yeah, so when it comes to the broadcasting thing, do these things cost money or how do you use them?
No, the ones that I used were just free downloads. So you just type in broadcast using this tool, and as a download it for Windows or Mac or whatever, and yeah, you just have to download it, much as you would download, I don't know, a messaging app like WhatsApp or something onto your phone. It's a little bit different because there's no Play Store, or you can't get it through the Google Play Store, for example. I don't believe. Uh, and
So
yeah,
it's only on computer, it's not on mobile?
good question. I'm not sure. I've never actually tried it. Never actually tried that. So I I imagine as someone somewhere has done something so that you'd be able to do that. Quality wise, how good that would come through, because you'd probably be using your mobile's audio equipment, I guess, unless you're a bit more sophisticated and have um, a phone, sorry, a microphone attached to that. Although even just the microphones with built into the earbuds are getting a lot better nowadays as well. So yeah, it might be possible.
Mhm. So when you're live streaming through Podhome, you're not an Apple Podcast, you're not live streaming into Spotify. There's a whole other ecosystem of podcasting apps that is receiving your feed. Um, Talk about that. Is that even important to even think about? Like, why should someone think that these new apps, these modern podcasting apps, modern podcast hosting services, why is it cool? Why is it important to even acknowledge these things?
Yeah, you asked that before, and I
Oh,
forgot to mention that. So the apps that it will go out onto that I know for sure are Fountain, Podcast Guru, Podverse, I believe Podfriend, CurioCaster, and if I'm missing any True Fans, and if I'm missing any others, apologies. I think I am, but those are the kind of main ones that I know of. So it's not just one place where you're forcing your audience to go to X app. It's you're kind of already saying like, hey, if you're uh, if you want to try out a different app or something, or if they're already using it'll show up in there. Obviously, I didn't mention the big ones there of Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and that's because they typically tend to lag in adopting these things because they're big companies and they take a while. So, in terms of the utility of perhaps someone who's got a really big podcast and they want the bulk of their audience to easily be able to access this, and they want them to be able to do it where they already are in Apple or Spotify. It's probably going to take a couple of years until those companies adopt these new things. The reason for doing it is, yeah, because perhaps you've got a show that you want to interact with your audience more, and perhaps you don't want to do it through video on YouTube. Plenty of people, I mean, that's kind of one of the boons of podcasting, right? It's an audio predominant thing. You can have video podcasts, but when people uh, talk about podcasts and they're using the technically correct definition of using it through RSS, the bulk of it is audio based. And so if you don't want to appear on camera, you don't have to. You can do it through these apps. The additional benefits that you can do through this is similar to YouTube, how if you're at a certain level already, you can monetize through super chats, and so people can send a message with money attached, or money with a message attached, if you want to look at it that way. And you can do very similar things within these apps as well, which we call boostergrams. And this is where it adds that element of like, oh, okay, not only is the audience being able to listen in, but they can participate by sending messages and by sending support that reaches me, the podcaster, directly. And then it has all the additional benefits of podcasting, which is If you say something wrong, you're not going to get kicked off of YouTube. If you accidentally say one of the naughty words, such as suicide or violence or killing or pedophilia or something like that, you're not going to get demonetized automatically, which tends to happen on YouTube. So there's a whole bunch of benefits. The only kind of downside at the moment is that it's small, but it's growing, and these technologies, that's typically tends what happens. It starts off small until it grows into something super big.
So the overall experience, you would say, is simple using Podhome. They have instructions. Is that like a walkthrough sort of a thing, or they just like sort of just tell you like 3 bullet points, and then is it really that simple? Like you're doing one click in the broadcasting, and then you do one click in Podhome, and then it's good to go?
I'm an advanced user because I've already been playing around with this stuff for a while. So for me, it was really intuitive. Okay, I already had downloaded the tool that I needed to be able to interface with Podhome, for example. But because Barry, the owner of Podhome, is this company is so new, he doesn't have all of these old instructions and old things which are not helpful or perhaps were helpful 5 years ago when the technology was different. So look, it's hard to comment for me exactly, but I know there's instructions on the page which are saying, hey, here's where you click this link, here's where you put this thing. If you're completely new to technology, just in general, if you're a first time podcaster, for example, it might be overwhelming because you're then having to add in terms of this, in terms of what microphone do I buy, what headphones do I get, how do I need to soundproof my studio, and all this. There's a lot of other things going on, but I think it's a good and relatively easy way of being able to live stream. I don't see it being particularly harder than having to learn how to live stream on YouTube, for example, because that's actually probably more difficult because you have to get another piece of software, and then you have to figure out, okay, how do I place my video in here, how do I make sure my audio is synced, how do I make sure I don't have flickering lights on the screen, which sometimes happens. So if you know how to live stream on YouTube, it's the exact same difficulty as live streaming on YouTube, probably a little bit easier.
Mhm. Well, that seems simple enough, honestly. Um, so we talked about sort of why. Um, what else comes to mind when you think of live streaming? Like, why should someone really go into it? Is this something that can actually build someone up, or is it just something that like random people on the internet do? Like, is there, do you see a real opportunity with building a community with live streaming?
I feel yeah, I feel like everyone's a random person on the internet nowadays. uh, I think there's variations on why you'd want to do it. If you are in a geographically remote place, which Australia kind of is in essence, being able to live stream with people from around the world. So, for example, with a lot of people in the US, because it's a much bigger market, so there's just much more people. Uh, being able to do that and having that connection with them, I could see being a potential benefit. Being able to get the experience of this live interaction is pretty fun. There's something a bit addictive about it, where you get a live comment or you see people interacting in the comments, and you're like, I created this. This was kind of my doing. That's really fun. Which I've had a couple of times, for example, on the book reviews channel that I do, and then also on the main channel as well. So yeah, it's in terms of building up an audience, I think you can do it. I, for example, I'll just give my I hinted at it before. My little backstory with it was most of the utility for live streaming purely through the audio through Podhome is because it's just an additional add-on that I can do at very little extra effort. Has it built more people coming into my show? I'd say not really, because it still suffers a little bit from the problem of you're live streaming, but it's not necessarily being showcased, highlighted in the apps, saying like, check out this show, like number one thing, go check out this. That's not necessarily the case. So I feel it's more a tool used for the dedicated people who are already listening to your show and want increased, the thousand true fans, which is kind of why one of the podcasting apps is called True Fans. Sam is building that for those kind of super supporters, that type of deal. I feel it's more for that. And so this is why if you're a smaller show, it's probably going to be, or a show just starting off, it's probably going to have that feeling of being really hard and pointless, and maybe is a bit more suited for people with an established base, or with people who already know the show and are really keen and gung ho and go like, I want to listen to you guys live. So um, and it it's, I think it's valuable. Sometimes we'll only have one or two people on our live streams, and I think that the extra effort that I did for them is worth it, because those are the people who are really dedicated, and I can give uh, an extra effort, an extra benefit to them with only a little bit of extra effort on my part. Once again, this all just gets into the ease that I use of recording and how I do things. If I really cared and was going every time I said you know, that's unprofessional, that sounds bad, or I'm not willing to have someone ring a doorbell, or a bird fly into a window, or a spider drop on my arm whilst recording, all of these things have happened, then then live streaming is perhaps not for you, but it adds those fun interactions as well. So yeah, that's kind of just my general thoughts on that.
Yeah, it opens you up to more like to more things happening to you. So it's like entertaining in that way. Someone can see some random spider drop on your head.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah,
a
absolutely. And that's what some of the greatest moments of live TV are. Well, that's what they all are. It's when something
mhm.
unexpected happens, and everyone's just kind of spellbound, going, "Holy crap, that just happened."
Yeah. Yeah, man, that's so real too because people want to see like I think the real draw of live streaming is like like seeing if something like not expected happens. Like that's the real opportunity. And listening to you say maybe on the audio side, like live streaming audio might not grab people because there's no algorithms within the podcast apps. That sounds like an opportunity to sort of play both sides to stream in the podcasting apps and to be on YouTube or any other app like X or Twitter, where there is an algorithm, there is eyeballs, there's an opportunity to get retweets and seen and to sort of catch a wave like that. And there seems to be a door opening for someone who's on YouTube who sees that live stream or sees that video. They like you, and that can shuffle them into being dedicated and actually just listening to you whenever you go live in the podcasting apps and just following you wherever you post. So there seems to be this like seesaw like like energy field almost of I th- I I think you're doing it right. I think you're doing it correct when you live stream, even though like you don't have to be the biggest show. Like who says you have to be the biggest show? Like what does that even mean? Like the biggest live stream, like it's about growing your community. It's about having people getting value from what you're talking about and from the way that you're doing it. And I think that's the real opportunity here because I think I think if you were to live stream in Podhome to the podcasting apps, that's just bringing up more opportunity for yourself to connect with people, and it brings you more opportunity to try to expand yourself into using new technology and to be consistent at a certain time because one of the keys I think you can speak to this is to have a consistent time to live stream so people know what time to tune in. so they can think about the clock. They can think about the time like, oh, now my attention is here. My attention is with Kyron. My attention is at this other thing. I think that's a really important thing. What have you experienced with that? Like, have you been hammering it on a certain time, or have like how do you manage that?
I, for the last probably, well, 6 months definitely have not been able to do that. It's been
Well, you've been
all,
traveling, yeah.
yeah, it's been all over the shop. And so I've been traveling different time zones. When I used to be able to do it has changed. And sometimes things come up with my co host. He's got a young baby. So obviously, babies just doing baby things can
Life.
change schedules. Life can change a lot of things. So consistency certainly is. This is not. This is just good advice in general for releasing podcasts or releasing audio or anything. It's good to just release at a consistent schedule at a consistent time, and people just build up habits around that. So it's probably, I'm not going to, even if it was the most optimal timing would be to go live streaming at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday morning in Australia. I'm not going to do that because that's just going to totally screw up the rest of the rest of my week and probably my life if I kept on doing that long term. So I think it's more about being able to consistency is more about being able to do it for yourself, and then people will tune in. They'll perhaps adjust their schedules to fit in more with yours, and there's a benefit for doing that. There's also that spontaneity thing of sometimes being able to just do it whenever you want. If the feeling strikes and you're like, hey, I want to do it. Well, the good thing with live streaming is you just click a button and you're on again, and you can just release something super quick. So there's benefits for both of those sides. Just in as a counterpoint to what you're saying before about having both going at the same time, that works with my overall philosophy with the podcast, which is I want it available anytime, any place, anywhere for anyone. And so I try and maximize distribution for everywhere like that, and I will go to extra efforts to make sure it's available like that. There is a counterpoint to this, which is sometimes it's better to niche down on certain things. And you can see this, for example, when someone has both an audio podcast, which they will upload as a video onto YouTube, because, well, YouTube, I guess, now does, you're able to export it as an RSS. So it is kind of a video podcast in a technical sense as well. But a lot of times they'll be talking about a graph, for example, or something on screen, or someone's even just showcasing with their hands. We're at this level, and then we got to here, but it wasn't a smooth road. And they're not describing what they're actually doing physically. And this is where you can kind of see like, oh, it's if you're a really good audio podcast. Uh, Joe Rogan used to do this a lot, for example, where he would get his uh, the person he was speaking with to his guest to describe exactly what they're seeing or what they're doing with their hands, or he would say it himself. Um, what you kind of see a lot nowadays is people don't really do that. So if you're just listening via the audio ones, audio only, you can get a little bit lost. It's not exactly suited for them. So this is where doubling down on a particular one, for example, on just the video live streaming or just on the audio live streaming, there is an argument to be made where that's beneficial as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, to always be descriptive and to know like where your voice is being heard at. Some people might need like more descriptive visual to help them figure that out. So I think that's good. I remember watching Joe Rogan, and that would always happen. I would laugh at the guests sometimes. It's like, how do you not know to describe what we're looking at? Like, I literally don't know what is on the screen in front of you, because I might be on an app, I might be driving, I'm not looking at the screen. I don't really like. So usually when I have a video podcast up, it's just because it's just on YouTube. Like, I'm not really looking for the video. I'm not really like, I'm semi interested, maybe, just so I can see if the person speaking is telling the truth. That's really the only reason why I enjoy watching a video. But in
I th-
terms of that as well, like I think there's also some sort of inflection that you can give um, for only audio that a person can also tell if you're telling the truth or not, or if you're being honest.
I think that's
But in terms of
super
visuals, like it's
common.
so hmm?
I think that's super common, especially for YouTube on a, well, maybe not even especially on a mobile device, but I know for myself, for example, I consume a whole lot of YouTube. It's easily the number one app on my, health radar screen that pops up every week, the health app
Same.
um, but in terms of actual screen time, me looking at the screen, it's got to be, I want to say 20%, if that, probably a little bit less, because I will regularly put it on and then I'll do some stretching or I'll be doing some cooking or something, and it's the video element is not the hugest part of that. So this is also why I guess going live streaming onto YouTube is also good, because people will tend to use it as an audio app as well. And this is, you can tell that YouTube knows this, because there's all sorts of functionalities where you can minimize the screen so it's in the background playing, so the audio is coming through just as if it was a podcasting app, even though the video it's YouTube, it's video. So there's a whole lot of things like that where you can see that YouTube is not just a video app, but it's got a lot of audio, almost audio only functionalities that apply to it as well.
Hmm. I think when I experience live streams, whether it be in the modern podcasting apps or on YouTube, I'm always just on my phone and like doing something else. Like I'm never sitting down and like actually like watching or like sitting and thinking about what's being spoken about. Like I'm always moving, I'm doing something. And so I think there's a really interesting opportunity where if you were to live stream audio to the modern podcasting apps, it's just like a simple lane, I think. In my head, I think there's 2 lanes. You can go the YouTube lane, which is video, and that whole algorithm game. And the other lane is more open. It's a bit more open source, a bit more freedom, and you're able to have a bit more just self-expression in what you're doing. And if you can just simply hook up a little broadcast service and you're in like you listed off like 7 different apps, that's a big opportunity to express yourself. That's a big opportunity to talk about what you're building, what you're selling, what you're trying to do on earth. And I think it opens up just general opportunity for like a new world almost. Like you this whole podcasting 2.0, the modern podcasting stuff, it's so brand new. It's like barely 3 years old, right? Like when did podcasting 2.0 start? Do you remember?
Yeah, it was. I think it was in 2020. Yeah, it's about 4 years ago.
4 years ago. Yeah, dude. So it's just so early and people have a big opportunity. I think even though there's like still like some hurdles to jump over and there's still innovation happening. Like there's innovation happening all the time. Um I sir like me personally, like I don't live stream a lot, but I want to live stream more often because I see the value. Like the sheer fact that the mere mortals are live streaming, the sheer fact that like I can see that scheduled on the podcast app, I'm literally thinking about you. I'm literally thinking about what you said last week. I'm thinking about what you said last year. I'm remembering some funny thing. Like there's like a there's like an inner mind serendipityness when it comes to just being on someone's radar for a while. And that's what happens with live streaming. Because I
You
could think about, I don't have a specific example, but I know that if I'm on the podcast app and I see your live stream is scheduled, something random might pop in my head, a memory with you, a funny thing about an episode a while ago might come in. And it sort of encourages the relationship a bit more, I think.
yeah, I
It's like
use the
it's like you're meeting up at the mall almost.
you use the right word, serendipity. That was what was going through my mind as well, which is it's just an extra touch point for someone to be able to find you as well, not and to get an immediate dose of this is what I'm about, without them having to, potentially, like, that, let's say they hear about your podcast, but then they go to it and it's like, oh geez, if you're like the mere mortals, you've got 600 plus episodes. Where do I start? Do I want to start with the first one? Oh, I'll look at the show notes. Oh god, like this was, there's a time investment perhaps. There's been times where I've just scrolled through the things that were live on YouTube or on the podcasting apps and been like, oh, cool, this is happening right now. I'm just going to click on it and I'll tune in for a bit, and it doesn't matter that it's already halfway through, and I'll still just enjoy whatever they're at this portion. So yeah, there is that extra little bit of serendipity, I think, with the live streaming that can attract people in who perhaps would not have heard about you, um, nor would be inclined to get into whatever it is that you're doing, if it wasn't live.
Right. Yeah, man. I think it's a really interesting opportunity. So I think we're wrapping things up now. Is there anything else that is coming to mind about, like, if there's a new person who's coming into podcasting and is interested in live streaming, is there anything else that you want to tell them or encourage them with maybe some tips to live stream, or just like your personal, like something that you really hammer in for yourself, some advice that you tell yourself, or something that you remind yourself with for that new person?
Hmm. Nothing really comes to mind other than just the general rules. It's probably better to have some sort of plan of what you already want to talk about beforehand, so you're not just got this huge amounts of dead air when you're speaking. So having a little bit of a plan in place already, obviously the consistency is good. Being probably for someone new, the biggest thing would just be, have the lowest of expectations for yourself. Be prepared for the live stream to cut out midway through. Be prepared for it you to have the audio quality wrong, and so that you will have essentially an unlistenable an episode that is just completely trash. Be prepared for your mistakes to be front and center, and be prepared just just for general chaos, which the all the small mistakes that you would make whilst doing a normal podcast episode, but no one sees, i.e., forgetting to hit record. Everyone's done it. Um,
Done that before.
yeah, or having your mic muted and talking for 2 minutes without realizing that the other person on the other end isn't hearing you. Uh, all those sorts of things. Just be prepared for that. So I would say lower your expectations, as especially as you're first starting.
That's good advice. I think it's beautiful advice. Just be prepared for the unexpected. Be prepared to mess up. Don't hold yourself to a high standard. Of course, like, have a bar for yourself, but don't kill yourself over not meeting that right now, because it's always learning, right? I'm sure you're always learning more about this thing every week that you do that, correct?
Yeah, it's probably also the same mental barrier of first posting on the internet that a lot of people have. There's a lot of people who are just absolutely shameless and just have none of that self criticism. But if you're like me, for example, where you're just going like, who am I? Why does it matter what I put out? Everyone's going to look at this and judge me. They're not. Your first live stream, you're not going to get many people unless you're already a very well established brand or a personality or something. So getting over that, the same mental hurdle of posting a photo for the first time on the internet, or starting a new Instagram page, or starting a new podcast, you're going to feel that same mental barrier there for the live streaming, and just realize, like, you've overcome this once before, so you can probably overcome this one as well. Or if it's all bundled together, like, welcome, welcome to the club of doing something that's a little bit scary, but in the end, you'll realize it's not scary at all.
Yeah. Be prepared for anything and don't be afraid. I think that's great advice, Karen.
Yeah, man. It's
I think it's
good advice for
wise.
living.
Yeah, man. Well, hey, man, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for hanging out with me, man. Thank you for giving all your advice. I think what you just gave is valuable. I think what you just gave is, it's like there's so much access to live stream. There's so much access to do anything on the internet, but I think it can sort of get tangled up in people's minds. So thank you for straightening things out for us.
My pleasure. It's always fun to chat with someone and the things that you've been doing for a while, and you realize, oh, okay, yeah, here's another little insight which I perhaps not had realized that I was doing or that I'd seen elsewhere.
Yeah, man. New discoveries. Well, Carmen, thank you. The Mere Mortals podcast. When does it come out usually? How can people follow you and keep engaging with you?
Yeah, so there's I've got a couple of different ones. The Mere Mortals is the main one. I also hinted at the Mere Mortals book reviews, which I'm also doing. Probably the easiest way is just to go to meremortalspodcast.com, and you'll we will hopefully have a live stream schedule up there. That's been one of the things I've been meaning to do for a while. And as in terms of when episodes come out, it's still going to be for the next month or two, just choppy because I'm still traveling a bit. But when I get back home, it'll be I'm pretty sure it's going to be like a Sunday morning Australian Eastern Standard Time. So that would probably be like late evening or afternoon in the US or late evening
2
in
a.m. on Tuesday.
yeah, exactly right. But yeah, no, like you said, probably the easiest way would just be to go to follow us in one of those apps, like Fountain, for example, where it shows the schedule that we're putting out, and I typically do that at least a couple of days beforehand. Also on the YouTube channel, it shows when we're going live next. So if ever feel like joining in and seeing what all the stuff that I was describing, yeah, please do. And yeah, just Mere Mortals podcast is the way to find that.
Will do, sir. Will do. Thank you so much.
Brilliant. Thank you, Cole.